The stars shimmered against the vast blackness of space as the Vulturian ship emerged from faster-than-light travel. Its sleek, silver hull reflected the light of Earth's sun as it approached the third planet. Inside the United Nations Space Command Headquarters in Geneva, alarms blared. Admiral Franklin Porter rushed into the control room. His gray eyes narrowed as he studied the main screen. At 62, Porter had spent 4 decades in Earth's unified Space Force. The small fleet of human ships patrolling Earth's orbit seemed tiny compared to the alien vessel. "What do we know?" Porter asked. "Nothing yet, sir," replied Lieutenant Kate Brown. "It's unlike any ship we've ever seen. It's just sitting there, broadcasting some kind of signal on all frequencies." Porter nodded. "Let's hear it." The sound that filled the room was strange, a series of musical tones and clicks that somehow formed patterns. The computers worked to decode it. "It's a first contact protocol," said Dr. Abigail Wright, the lead xenolinguist. "They're trying to establish communication." 3 days later, Porter stood in the same room, now transformed into a meeting space. Across from him sat High Emissary Kallax of the Vulturian Concordat. The alien had blue-gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes, 3 of them, blinked in sequence as it observed the humans. "Your world is young," Kallax said through the translator device, "but your species shows promise." Porter kept his face neutral. "We appreciate your diplomatic approach. What brings the Vulturian Concordat to Earth?" Kallax's skin rippled, an expression Porter couldn't read. "Necessity, Admiral Porter. For 812 of your years, we have fought the Draxian Imperium. Neither side gains ground. Neither side can win." Porter leaned forward. "And what does this have to do with Earth?" "Everything," Kallax said. "We have observed your species. You fight differently. You think differently." The meeting room door opened, and Captain Lisa Martinez entered with a datapad. At 35, she was one of Earth's best tactical officers. She handed the pad to Porter without a word. "These readings confirm the Vulturian ship matches what they claim," she whispered. "And, sir, it's at least 200 years ahead of our technology." Porter looked back at Kallax. "You want our help in your war?" "We need your minds," Kallax replied. "The Draxians and Vulturians evolved toward perfect logic. Our strategies mirror each other. But humans," the alien made a gesture with its upper arms. "Humans are unpredictable. You make choices that defy optimal calculation." On the main screen, images appeared of vast space battles. Fleets of ships, thousands strong, engaged in perfect formations. The battles looked like complex dances, beautiful and deadly. "Both sides predict each other's moves with 99% accuracy," Kallax continued. "We have reached perfect stalemate." Porter studied the images. "And you think humans can break this stalemate?" "We know it," Kallax said. "We have studied your military history. Napoleon, Patton, Rommel. Your generals often succeed by doing what is considered irrational." Later that night, Porter stood at the window of his office, looking up at the stars. The Vulturian ship hovered in orbit, visible as a bright point of light. "What do you think, sir?" asked Commander Jack Russell, Porter's aide. "I think we just got pulled into something much bigger than us," Porter replied. "Can we stay neutral?" Russell asked. Porter shook his head. "Kallax showed me their star charts. This war spans hundreds of systems. Sooner or later, it would reach us anyway." "So what do we do?" Porter turned from the window. "We learn everything we can about both sides. Then we decide." The next morning, Porter stood before the United Nations Security Council. Representatives from every nation watched as he explained what Earth was facing. "The Vulturians are offering to share technology, medicine, and knowledge in exchange for our tactical input," Porter said. "But make no mistake, this will change humanity forever." The vote was unanimous. Earth would engage with the Vulturians. 1 week later, Porter watched as the first team of human officers boarded a Vulturian shuttle. Captain Martins led the group of 20 tactical experts who would observe Velturian military operations. "The war has begun for us," Porter said quietly to himself. "And nothing will ever be the same." Captain Lisa Martinez floated in the observation deck of the Velturian battleship. The stars looked different from this far away from Earth. She watched as Velturian ships moved in perfect formations, each one exactly where it should be. "They move like a machine," she said to Lieutenant Daniel Carter, who floated beside her. Carter nodded. His dark eyes tracked the ships with intense focus. At 32, he had a reputation for unusual thinking. His commanders had often called his battle plans strange or reckless. Now those same qualities had made him perfect for this mission. "Too perfect," Carter said. "Look at how they group their ships. There's no variation, no surprises." Dr. Abigail Wright joined them, her tablet computer filled with brain scan data. "That's exactly what makes humans different," she said. "The Velturians can't help but follow logical patterns. Their brains are wired for it." She showed them scans of human and Velturian brains side by side. The alien brain lit up in regular, organized patterns. The human brain looked chaotic by comparison, with activity jumping between different regions. "We make intuitive leaps," Wright explained. "We see connections they can't. We do things that don't make logical sense but somehow work." Later that day, Carter sat in a strategy meeting with Velturian commanders. The alien officers displayed a hologram of their next planned battle. The Draxian forces were shown in red, the Velturian ships in blue. Both sides formed neat, mirrored patterns. "This is your plan?" Carter asked. The Velturian fleet commander, Jax Tor, blinked his 3 eyes in sequence. "It is the optimal formation based on 800 years of combat data." Carter stood up and walked to the hologram. "May I?" he asked, reaching toward the controls. Jax Tor nodded. Carter moved his hands through the hologram, dragging Velturian ships into a completely different formation. He split the fleet into 3 uneven groups. The Velturians watched in silence. "This formation is unbalanced," said one Velturian officer. "It leaves our left flank exposed." "Exactly," Carter said. "The Draxians will expect you to protect that flank. They'll commit resources to attack it. But it's a trap." The Velturians looked confused. "Your ships here," Carter pointed, "will appear vulnerable. When the Draxians move to attack, these ships will swing around and hit them from behind." Jax Tor studied the plan. "This violates basic fleet doctrine." "That's why it will work," Carter replied. "The Draxians won't expect it." Back on Earth, Admiral Porter met with the United Nations Security Council. The screen showed images of the Velturian homeworlds and military bases. "They've shared more technology in 2 weeks than we've developed in the last century," Porter said. "But there are risks." Commander Jack Russell stood beside a display of star maps. "If we help the Velturians win, we become targets for the Draxians. If we stay out of it, both sides might eventually come for Earth anyway." The council members looked troubled. "What about the Draxians?" asked the representative from Brazil. "Have we tried to contact them?" Porter shook his head. "The Velturians say any attempt would be seen as betrayal, but I've authorized a secret intelligence mission to learn more about them." 2 days later, Martinez watched in amazement as the Velturian fleet implemented Carter's plan against a small Draxian patrol. The Draxians responded exactly as Carter had predicted, moving to attack the seemingly vulnerable flank. The trap closed perfectly. "It worked," she said into her comlink. "Of course it worked," Carter replied from the command ship. "We did what they considered illogical." News of the victory spread quickly through the Velturian fleet. More commanders requested human advisors for their ships. In her quarters that night, Martinez recorded her report for Admiral Porter. "The Velturians are starting to trust us," she said, "but this was just a small battle. The real test will come when we face the main Draxian fleet." As she finished her report, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. The Draxians had launched a major counterattack. "They're adapting faster than expected," Martines whispered to herself. This is just the beginning. Major Samantha Wells stood on the bridge of the Velturian cruiser Starlight Spear. The alien crew worked at their stations, their 4 arms moving with precise efficiency. As the only human on the bridge, Wells felt the weight of their stares. The human wishes to change our communication protocol again, said First Officer Trell. His tone made it clear what he thought of the idea. Yes, Wells said firmly. Your current system is too rigid. In battle, conditions change too quickly. Captain Vorex, the ship's commander, looked at Wells with all 3 of his eyes. Our protocols have served us for centuries. And for centuries, you've been stuck in a stalemate, Wells replied. The bridge fell silent. Wells knew she was pushing boundaries, but humans had been embedded with Velturian crews for 3 months now. Progress was too slow. Show me your new system, Vorex said finally. Wells brought up her tablet. Lieutenant Ryan Harrison, a communications expert from Earth, had developed a new protocol that allowed for faster battlefield updates and more flexible responses. This system uses shorter codes and allows field commanders to make decisions without waiting for central approval, Wells explained. Vorex studied the system. This gives too much autonomy to lower ranks. That's the point, Wells said. Your enemies can predict your moves because every decision comes from the top. This creates unpredictability. After hours of debate, Vorex agreed to test the new protocol in a small skirmish. 3 days later, Wells watched as the Starlight Spear and 2 support ships engaged a Draxian patrol. The battle started like all others, with ships moving into traditional formations. Then the Draxians executed a flanking maneuver. Under the old system, the Velturian ships would have waited for Central Command's orders. Instead, using Harrison's protocol, the support ship captains adjusted their positions immediately. The Draxian attack failed. Their ships broke formation, confused by the unexpected response. The Velturians pressed their advantage and drove the enemy away. Your system has merit, Vorex admitted afterward. Word of the success spread. Soon, other Velturian ships requested human advisors. Wells found herself coordinating the placement of human officers throughout the fleet. On the Velturian command ship, Captain Martinez met with the High Command. The large chamber was filled with senior Velturian officers, their blue-gray skin shimmering under the lights. The integration is proceeding too slowly, Martinez said. We need to implement human tactics fleet-wide. Supreme Commander Talax, the leader of all Velturian forces, leaned forward. Some of our captains resist. They say human tactics lack proper form and structure. They're right, Martinez agreed. That's why they work. She displayed footage from 20 recent battles where human tactics had been used. In each case, the Velturians had achieved victory with fewer losses than expected. The Draxians are beginning to adjust, Martinez warned. We need to push harder now, before they'd fully adapt. After hours of discussion, the High Command agreed to expand human involvement. Martinez returned to her quarters to find a message from Admiral Porter. She played it on her personal device. The situation is changing, Porter said in the recording. We've detected increased Draxian activity near Earth. They know about our alliance with the Velturians. Be careful, Captain. Things are about to get more complicated. Meanwhile, on the edge of Velturian space, Lieutenant Daniel Carter led a small mixed crew on a scouting mission. Their ship, modified with both human and Velturian technology, moved quietly through an asteroid field. Sensors picking up something, said the Velturian navigator. Draxian signatures, but different. Carter studied the readings. They're adapting their ships to counter our tactics. The Draxian vessels moved in patterns that seemed almost random, very unlike their usual precise formations. They're learning from us, Carter realized aloud. He opened a channel to Velturian command. This is Lieutenant Carter. The Draxians are changing their tactics. We need to prepare. As he sent the message, the first Draxian shots streaked past their ship. The next phase of the war had begun. Colonel Greg Phillips walked alone through the park, near the United Nations Space Command headquarters. The evening was cool, with stars just becoming visible in the darkening sky. He checked his watch. His meeting with Admiral Porter was in 30 minutes. A noise behind him made Phillips turn. 3 figures emerged from the shadows of the trees. They didn't look human. Their skin had a reddish tint, and their eyes glowed slightly in the dim light. "Draxians," Phillips whispered, reaching for his sidearm. He was too slow. A bright flash blinded him, and Phillips felt his body go numb. As he collapsed, strong hands grabbed him. "Take him quickly," one of the Draxians said in perfect English. "The transport leaves in 10 minutes." Before they could move, bright lights flooded the area. "Freeze! Special Forces!" A woman's voice commanded. Captain Nicole Bradley and her team surrounded the Draxians, weapons raised. The aliens hesitated, then dropped Phillips and reached for weapons of their own. The fight was brief but intense. Bradley's team had trained for this moment. Within seconds, 2 Draxians were down. The third tried to activate some kind of device on his wrist, but Bradley shot it off his arm. "We have them," Bradley reported into her comm. "Colonel Phillips is safe." Later that night, Admiral Porter stared at the captured Draxians through a one-way window. They sat in a secure room, restrained but defiant. "How long have they been watching us?" Porter asked. "Decades at least," Bradley replied. "We found surveillance equipment in their ship that's been gathering data on Earth for at least 30 years. Porter frowned. "They knew about us before the Volturians made contact." "Yes, sir. And they've been studying us just as carefully." In another room, Engineer Ben Howard examined the equipment taken from the Draxian ship. His fingers moved carefully over the alien technology, his eyes wide with excitement. "This is amazing," he said to Dr. Wright. "Their tech approaches problems from a completely different angle than either ours or the Volturians." Wright nodded. "Can you find any weaknesses?" Howard pointed to a component in what seemed to be the ship's main computer. "Their systems are incredibly efficient, but rigid. They don't handle unexpected inputs well. A human hacker could probably find ways to confuse their systems." "Just like their tactics," Wright said thoughtfully. The next morning, Porter met with Earth's Unified Defense Council. Representatives from every major military power sat around a large table, faces grim. "The Draxians have made the first move against us directly," Porter said. "We need to respond." General Laura Simmons, head of Earth's combined military forces, stood up. "I recommend we formally ally with the Volturian Concordat. No more advisors. We commit actual forces." "That would mean war," said the representative from India. "We're already at war," Simmons replied. "The Draxians just told us so." The vote was close, but in the end, the council agreed. Earth would join the war officially. 2 weeks later, the first human warships prepared to join the Volturian fleet. They had been upgraded with Volturian technology, making them faster and more powerful than any ships humans had built before. Captain Bradley walked through the hangar of the flagship, watching as crews made final preparations. Colonel Phillips joined her, fully recovered from his ordeal. "Ready for this?" Phillips asked. Bradley nodded. "We've been training for weeks. The Volturians are impressed with our special forces tactics. The Draxians won't expect humans to be on the front lines." Phillips said. "They still think we're just advisors." "That's our advantage," Bradley replied. Surprise. On the bridge, Admiral Porter watched as Earth grew smaller on the view screen. A fleet of 20 human ships followed his flagship, with more being prepared back home. "Signal the Volturian High Command," Porter ordered. "Tell them the human fleet is on its way." As the ships accelerated to faster-than-light speed, Porter thought about how quickly everything had changed. 6 months ago, humans didn't know aliens existed. Now they were heading into battle against one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The war had truly begun. The Proxima system blazed with weapons fire. Admiral Porter watched from the bridge of his flagship as human and Velturian ships engaged the Draxian fleet. This was the biggest battle yet with human forces involved. "Status report," Porter ordered. "Our left flank is holding," replied his tactical officer. "The Velturian ships are following the plan exactly." Porter nodded. Unlike previous battles where humans merely advised, this time Porter commanded a full battle group. 3 Velturian admirals had agreed to follow his orders, something unheard of before. In the fighter bay of Porter's flagship, Flight Commander Olivia Patterson briefed her pilots. At 29, she was one of Earth's best fighter pilots, now in command of a mixed squadron of human and Velturian fighters. "Remember the drills," she told them. "The Draxians expect us to attack in standard patterns. We won't." Her plan called for fighters to approach in seemingly random groups, changing formation constantly. The Velturian pilots had struggled with the concept during training. Their natural instinct was to form perfect, symmetrical patterns. "Trust the chaos," Patterson said. "That's our strength." The fighters launched. Patterson led the first wave toward a Draxian cruiser. As expected, the enemy deployed defensive patterns designed to counter traditional approaches. "Break now," Patterson ordered. The fighters scattered in 12 different directions. The Draxian tracking systems faltered, unable to predict their movements. Patterson's fighter slipped through a gap in their defenses and fired directly at the cruiser's command center. Other fighters followed, striking from unexpected angles. The Draxian shift shields failed, and it began to drift. "First target down," Patterson reported. Throughout the battle, similar scenes played out. Human unpredictability combined with Velturian precision created a fighting force unlike anything the Draxians have faced before. On the Velturian command ship, Supreme Commander Talax watched in amazement as the battle unfolded. "The humans fight like nothing I have seen in 8 centuries of war," he said to Captain Martinez, who stood beside him. "We don't see patterns the way you do," Martinez explained. "We see opportunities." After 6 hours of intense fighting, the Draxian fleet retreated. The Proxima system, a key strategic location, fell to the Velturian-Human alliance. Porter called a meeting of all ship commanders afterward. The room was filled with both human and Velturian officers. "Today's victory is significant," Porter said, "but the Draxians will adapt. We need to keep changing our tactics." A Velturian commander raised a hand. "The randomness of human attack patterns makes planning difficult." "That's exactly why they work," Porter replied. "We need to embrace unpredictability as our greatest weapon." The victory at Proxima had consequences beyond that system. Within weeks, Draxian forces withdrew from 3 nearby star systems, unable to defend them against the new tactics. Back on Earth, the news was met with celebration and concern. In his office at Space Command, Commander Jack Russell briefed world leaders on the latest developments. "The Draxians are pulling back, but they're also studying our tactics," Russell explained. "They're adaptable, just not as quickly as we are." "How long before they figure out effective countermeasures?" asked the president of the African Union. "Our analysts give us 3 to 6 months," Russell replied. "We need to press our advantage now." More human ships were prepared, more troops trained in space combat. What had started as an advisory role had become a full military alliance. In her fighter after another successful mission, Patterson reviewed the combat footage. The Draxians were already showing signs of adapting, their formations becoming less predictable. "They're learning," she told her squadron. "But so are we." On the edge of the Proxima system, Admiral Porter stood before a view screen showing the next target, a major Draxian stronghold that had stood for centuries. "The Velturians never would have attempted this," he said to his officers. "But we're not Velturians." The human-led fleet prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed. For the first time in centuries, the endless war had momentum. The tide was beginning to turn. The Grand Hall of the Velturian High Command glowed with soft blue light. Admiral Porter stood before the 7 Supreme Commanders, the highest military authority in the Velturian Concordat. The air felt heavy with the weight of history. "We have discussed your proposal at length, Admiral Porter," said Supreme Commander Talax. "It is without precedent." Porter remained calm, though inside he felt the tension. What he asked was bold, too bold, perhaps. "The results speak for themselves," Porter replied. "In the last 3 months, human-led battle groups have won 14 major engagements. The Draxians are retreating across multiple sectors." The commanders looked at each other. Their three-eyed gazes were unreadable to most humans, but Porter had learned to spot subtle signs of their emotions. "To place 1/3 of our entire fleet under human operational command is," Talax paused, searching for the right word, "extraordinary." "These are extraordinary times," Porter said. "For 8 centuries, neither side could gain advantage. Now we have one. We must press it." After hours of debate, the Velturian High Command made their decision. Porter would be given command of 1/3 of the Velturian fleet, over 2,000 ships. It was unprecedented in the history of the Concordat. The next day, Porter established Humanity Command as the coordinating body for all human military personnel in the war. He asked strategic analyst Maria Gonzalez to develop a new doctrine that would maximize the strengths of both species. Gonzalez worked day and night, studying battles from both human history and the centuries-long war. After 2 weeks, she presented her findings to Porter and the senior commanders. "Velturians excel at precision and coordination," Gonzalez explained. "Humans excel at adaptation and unpredictability. Together, we can create something new." She displayed her doctrine on the main screen. It called for mixed crews on all major ships, with command structures that allowed for both Velturian precision in execution and human creativity in planning. "This isn't just about tactics," Gonzalez said. "It's about creating a new way of thinking about war itself." Porter approved the doctrine immediately. Within days, ships were being reassigned, crews mixed, and training programs established. Captain Lisa Martinez, now a senior advisor to Porter, watched as the changes took effect throughout the fleet. "Some of the Velturians still resist," she told Porter. "They think we're too reckless." "They'll learn," Porter replied, "or they'll be left behind." 1 month later, the first major offensive under the new doctrine began. Porter directed a coordinated attack on 7 star systems simultaneously, something the Velturians would never have attempted. From his command ship, Porter watched tactical displays showing the progress of the battle. The human Velturian forces moved with surprising fluidity, adapting to Draxian responses faster than ever before. "The Draxians are attempting to predict our movements," reported a Velturian tactical officer. "They expect us to follow logical patterns." "Then let's be illogical," Porter ordered. He directed several battle groups to make seemingly random course changes. The Draxians scrambled to respond, spreading their forces thin. "Now hit them where they're weakest," Porter commanded. The offensive lasted less than a standard galactic month. When it ended, 7 star systems had been reclaimed, the greatest territorial gain in centuries of war. News of the victory spread quickly. More Velturian commanders requested to join Humanity Command. Recruitment on Earth increased as humans embraced their new role in the galaxy. In his private quarters, Porter reviewed reports from across the front. The Draxians were struggling to adapt to human tactics. Their perfect, logical minds couldn't process the seemingly random decisions humans made in battle. "They can't predict what they don't understand," Porter said to himself. A message from Earth interrupted his thoughts. The United Nations was voting to commit even more resources to the war effort. Humanity had fully embraced its role in the conflict. Porter looked out at the stars. What had begun as a simple advisory role had evolved into something much greater. Humans weren't just helping fight a war, they were changing how the war itself was fought. And they were winning. The emergency alert woke Admiral Porter from a deep sleep. He rushed to the command center of his flagship, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "Report," he ordered. Captain Martinez looked up from the main display, her face grim. "The Draxians have deployed a new weapon, sir," They've destroyed 3 civilian colonies in the Rigel sector. Porter watched the footage in horror. Entire planets burned, their surfaces turned to glass by some kind of energy weapon of unimaginable power. Casualties? He asked quietly. Over 12 million Velturians, Martins replied. They're targeting civilian populations now. They're desperate. Porter called an emergency meeting with the Velturian High Command. The mood was dark as they discussed the new threat. Our intelligence suggests they have a central facility where these superweapons are produced, said Supreme Commander Talax. It is deep within Draxian space, heavily guarded. Then we need to take it out, Porter said. A special operations team could get in. Lieutenant Colonel Eric Foster, commander of the Human Special Forces, stepped forward. My team can do it, sir. Foster was a quiet, intense man who had led dozens of high-risk missions since the war began. His mixed team of human and Velturian commandos had become legendary for accomplishing the impossible. This would be a one-way trip, Talax warned. Not if we plan it right, Foster replied. We've studied Draxian security protocols. They have patterns, just like their battle tactics. We can exploit them. Porter approved the mission. As Foster's team prepared, Porter began planning the largest fleet action in the history of the war, a direct assault on the Draxian home systems. They'll expect us to pull back after their superweapon attack, Porter told his commanders. Instead, we'll push forward with everything we have. The plan was audacious. While Foster's team infiltrated the weapon facility, Porter would lead a massive fleet to engage the Draxian forces directly. It would draw attention away from Foster while positioning the Allied fleet for a decisive battle. 3 days later, Foster's small stealth ship slipped past Draxian patrols. His team of 12, 6 humans, and 6 Velturians, prepared their equipment. Remember, we move in pairs, Foster told them. Human unpredictability, Velturian precision. That's how we win. They landed in a remote area and infiltrated the massive facility under cover of darkness. The Draxian guards moved in predictable patterns, just as Foster had expected. They never changed their routines, whispered Sergeant Alan Quinn. Even now. The team reached the central power core that supplied energy to the superweapon production lines. They placed explosive charges at key points, then began their retreat. But an alarm sounded. They've detected us, Foster said. Move fast. As Foster's team fought their way out, Admiral Porter led the fleet into position. Over 3,000 ships, the largest Allied force ever assembled, emerged from faster-than-light travel near Draxus Prime, the heart of the Draxian Empire. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega, Porter ordered. Unlike traditional formations, Porter's fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each moving in seemingly random patterns. The Draxian defense fleet scrambled to respond, but couldn't predict where the attacks would come from. The Draxians are committing their reserve forces, reported a tactical officer. Good, Porter replied. That means fewer ships at the weapon facility. On the facility, Foster's team reached their extraction point just as their explosives detonated. The entire complex shuddered, then began to collapse as chain reactions spread through its power systems. Mission accomplished, Foster reported as his ship lifted off. The facility is destroyed. The news energized the Allied fleet. The battle for Draxus Prime intensified as Porter implemented a strategy so unconventional that Velturian commanders had initially thought it was a mistake. Ships attacked from multiple vectors simultaneously, retreated without apparent reason, then attacked again from unexpected directions. The Draxian commanders couldn't establish any pattern to predict. Within hours, the Draxian orbital defenses began to collapse. For the first time in 8 centuries, enemy ships entered orbit around the Draxian homeworld. We're receiving a signal, Martine said, surprise in her voice. It's from the Draxian ruling council. They want to discuss surrender terms. Porter looked around the command center. Human and Velturian officers stood side by side, equally stunned. The war that couldn't be won, Porter said quietly, about to end. The great hall of the Galactic Concord shimmered with light. Representatives from 3 species, humans, Velturians, and Draxians, sat around a massive circular table. After 8 centuries of war, peace was being built. Ambassador Susan Miller led the human delegation. At 56, she had been a diplomat for most of her life, but nothing had prepared her for this moment, helping forge peace between ancient enemies. The terms must be fair, Miller said to the assembled representatives. Not just punishment. The Velturian delegates shifted uncomfortably. Their species had suffered for centuries in the war. Many wanted the Draxians to pay heavily for their actions. The humans speak of reconciliation, said High Emissary Kellax. This is not a concept our people fully understand. Miller nodded. It's difficult, but continuing the cycle of revenge only ensures future wars. She presented a peace plan that surprised both alien species. Instead of harsh reparations, it called for cooperation, shared technology, and mutual defense. Most shocking of all, it proposed that former enemies would eventually serve together in a unified defense force. This is how we build lasting peace, Miller explained. Not by punishing the defeated, but by making them partners. The debates lasted for weeks. At times, it seemed the peace would fall apart. But slowly, the alien representatives began to understand the human perspective. Your species thinks differently, the Draxian Prime Delegate said to Miller. You see possibilities where we see only the patterns of the past. After a month of negotiations, the Galactic Concord was established, a new governing body where all 3 species would have equal representation. Earth, despite being the newest arrival on the galactic stage, was granted the same status as civilizations thousands of years older. Admiral Porter, now elevated to Supreme Allied Commander, began the difficult task of creating a unified defense force. Human officers worked alongside both Velturians and Draxians, teaching them to work together. It won't be easy, Porter told his staff. These species have hated each other for centuries. But the process moved forward, slowly but steadily. Mixed crews began training together. Former enemies learned to trust one another. On Earth, the changes were just as dramatic. Alien technology transformed human society. New medicines cured diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Energy became clean and abundant. Poverty began to recede as resources became plentiful. Ships from all 3 species docked at Earth's orbiting stations. Cultural exchanges flourished. Humans taught the aliens about art, music, and literature, concepts that had been set aside during the Long War. In her office at the new Galactic Concord headquarters in Geneva, Ambassador Miller met with Admiral Porter to discuss progress. The Draxians have approved the officer exchange program, Miller said. They'll be sending their first cadets to our academies next month. Porter nodded. And we're sending humans to theirs. Who would have thought it possible a year ago? Humans have always been good at imagining the impossible, Miller replied with a smile. Outside the window, construction crews worked on the new Concord Tower, a massive structure that would house representatives from all 3 species and eventually others who might join the alliance. What do you think the future holds? Porter asked, looking out at the activity. More challenges, Miller said honestly. Peace is harder than war in many ways, but also more possibilities than any of us can imagine. Later that evening, Porter stood on the observation deck of his flagship, now orbiting Earth. The ship carried a mixed crew, humans, Velturians, and even a few Draxian officers in training. As he looked down at his home planet, Porter reflected on how quickly everything had changed. In less than 2 years, humanity had gone from an isolated species to a key member of a galactic civilization. Captain Martinez joined him at the window. Orders just came in, she said. We're to lead the first joint species exploration mission beyond known space. Porter smiled. From fighting a war to exploring the universe, I think I prefer this new mission. As the ship prepared to depart, Porter couldn't help but feel proud. Humanity hadn't just helped end a war, they had changed the course of galactic history, not through superior strength or technology, but through a uniquely human combination of tactical creativity, adaptability, and capacity for both warfare and compassion. The stars waited, and for the first time in centuries, the future looked bright for all three civilizations.